Hello and welcome. For those new to my channel, welcome. For those returning back, welcome back. I'm absolutely excited to have you here on this day of
For the day of reckoning is upon us.
individual time trial. So while I do have the draft gauge showing in sauce, it is going to be completely useless today because it's not going to do anything for me. Not going to show me anything because there's no drafting. And so we are in the Neokyo all-nighter, which not a fan of this this world, and really only not a fan of how the mini map looks in this world. But we got 3 sprints for the sprint segments, but 2 chances at each one. So I'm going to divide my sprints up so that way I can conserve a little bit of sprint energy because they're so quick back to back that I don't think I can do all 3 of them.
You can do it!
Back to back. So, and then I took a look at some of the guys that I am competing up against for the green jersey points, which I gotta say, boy oh boy, this competition is getting tight. We are all off by a few seconds from each other in terms of actual sprints, but points wise, not far at all from each other.
If you take a look at the points between me and Felix is only 6 points. And then the next person up is quite a bit away, is about 30 something, almost 40 points. And then another, 40 points or, plus to uh, the first place. So there's definitely a gap growing there. But the second place rider is actually an upgrade from a lower category. And I can see why, because he is definitely a strong sprinter. And so that is what I'm facing up against.
So I think the spread is like 50 points.
60 points.
Between all of us. And so it is going to be a tight competition all the way till the end. And some of the numbers they hit today are fire, absolute fire. So that's the goal, is to try and match their numbers as best as possible. I'm on the DT Swiss disc wheels, as I mentioned yesterday. Since I am now no longer in 4th place, I'm in 3rd. Officially moved up to a podium spot, but it's going to be an absolute fight in order for me to keep it. So
I can do this all day.
as long as I can continue to compete well and do my best, then I will continue notching away on those podium spots.
Get on with it!
And so 10 seconds left on this individual time trial. And hopefully I can knock out a new 5-minute PR at the end.
So I'm going to fast forward to the first sprint. And the reason for that is because it's a time trial. There's really not much to talk about here other than my goal was to stay right around my FTP. But as you can see, my numbers are all over the place. In the flats, I'm staying in the kind of upper 100s, low 200s. And then in the climbs, which are, 1-2% climbs, nothing major, I'm pushing up into the mid 200s, a little bit above that. Sometimes going into the low, upper 200s, low 300s, but really trying to stay in the mid, within my FTP range. Because again, it's a time trial. There's no draft, there's no peloton to work with. It's just you against you, while other people are sharing the road as well. And so as we start approaching the real first sprint, as you saw, I went through another one, which I initially kind of mentally had to double check, and as well as physically double check to make sure that I'm not, missing my sprint. And so as we get to this approach on the next sprint, I want you to take a look at the map on the bottom. And the reason for that is because if you look at the gradient profile, you'll see that while, when you zoom out and take a look at the stage as a whole, the terrain looks flat. But as you can see on the approach to the sprint, where the arrow is pointing to, it's actually a slight incline up, and that little bit of an incline, and then you get a nice little sharp kind of bend upward, almost at the very front, just before the start of the sprint. That is a spot where if you're not paying attention, if you're in the wrong gear, you could lose a lot of power. And that's kind of what happens to me here. You see, I'm at 33 kilometers per hour. I get on the pedals and just kind of start pushing up because I'm starting to lose speed, but I'm having to push a little bit harder just to kind of maintain. My RPMs come down super far because I went into my 53.11, which ultimately kind of burned me out um, before I even got to the sprint, which was a tactical error on my part. But as I start approaching the initial start of the sprint, I start ramping up like I did previously. Now around 70-ish RPM, 300 and something watts, and then I launch my sprint as I do right before the start of the actual sprint itself, and just kind of push through holding 900 plus 1,000 watts, and then start to slow down a bit towards the halfway part of this sprint because I was hurting. And then I push up, give one good dig, push up again, and just do my best to get across the line.
Ah, oh my god.
And so end up crossing the line at
24.
24 seconds,
Not bad.
24:03, which at the time, in comparison to my competition, I'm about 2+ seconds slower than they are. So that is, red flag in my mind because I know that, if I don't perform well on the next sprints, then I'm going to be paying for that points wise. So again, tactically, I was planning on not sprinting this first round for this middle sprint. And the reason for that is because, as you can hear from my breath, I'm still kind of huffing and puffing. My heart rate's in the
Good job, dude.
150s. Not quite coming down any further than that, but I still wanted to give myself ample time of rest in between these first and third sprint. So this was just kind of cruising through, and I'll go ahead and jump to that third sprint. Again, thanks to Sam from Spin to Win on the tips for the sauce plugin, because as you see on the gradient profile, again, not flat. It, sort of slopes down, starts to slope down where I'm at. And then as I approach the sprint section, it actually starts to climb upward. Now, these climbs, these little pitches upward are nothing. They're 1% and 2% pitches. In the case of the, this pitch right here, I'm, pushing through it. It's, jumps into 3% for a split second, but ultimately I'm pushing through it, and, you know, I don't really feel like it's slowing me down at this point. But again, tactically, I'm looking at that map and seeing what the gradient looks like, where I need to, you know, essentially at what point on the gradient I need to shift into the right gear. So that way I can not only maximize my speed, but not shave as much RPMs as I did previously on the first sprint. So as I start to approach, again, start kind of pedaling a little bit harder. And then as I approach the sprint line, I launch, again, pushing over 1,000 watts for a split second there, and just trying to get back up on it. Love how the fire comes out from behind me and just kind of like makes the screen brighter almost. And so just continuously pushing through, and I held my wattage a lot better this time around, even though it's a little bit longer sprint. But because of that, I crossed the line in 21:06 or 21:64. That's what it was, 21:64. So I feel like I did really good on this tower sprint. Kind of where I needed to be with regards to my competition. And so, I just felt like I felt like this sprint, I didn't need to try to, do better than on the next round. So I'm going to go ahead and fast forward to the next sprint that I do, which is after the KOM, and then I'll, push in with the final climb up the rooftop. So jumping forward to the next sprint, as I got into this sprint, I didn't intend on trying to beat my time, but I decided last minute to go for it and recognized immediately that I just did not have the power I did the first time around. And so I
Oh
gave
my
it a
goodness.
good
Okay.
dig, but ultimately crossed the line ever so slightly
Oh my god.
slower the second time around. So I just decided to just
Second was
leave it
definitely
at
worse.
that. Ended up
Oh, no,
about
it's all right.
half a second slower
All
the second time around than the first one. So I just didn't, you know,
right.
I shouldn't have done it. Is what it comes down to. I really shouldn't have pushed my luck with it because that, I think, in a way, kind of left me with, you know, with weaker legs for this next sprint coming up. But ultimately, I do feel like on this sprint, I gave myself a good opportunity to score well. But big but, if you look at the profile, so, and I kind of lost sight of this as I was doing it. If you look at the profile, I'm sloping down right now, ever so slightly, negative, 1%, and then it starts to climb back up. And so as we climb back up, I get into my 53.11 because mentally I'm thinking this sprint is right around the corner. And so you see me out of the saddle there for a second, trying to push up the speed just a little bit. And I'm thinking it's right around the corner, I'll be fine. But as I start to approach this corner, I realize it's actually a little further away than I thought it was. And so I'm in my 53.11 grinding the gear in 45 RPMs and ultimately putting a lot of unneeded pressure on my quads. And so as I start to approach the initial start of the sprint, I feel like it is taking much, much, much longer to get there. And I'm just slowly withering away. My match is slowly burning out. And so I try and ease off the pace a little bit, which ultimately slows me down, even though I'm still going 40, plus kilometers an hour. As I approach, again, launch my sprint. Obviously not as hard as I could go. As you saw, I didn't even hit 1,000 watts, but I held my wattage fairly well throughout the entire duration of the sprint, staying in between the 800s, 900s, and then crossing the line in 13 seconds, 13.79, which again, had I have not been in my 53.11 for the couple hundred meters, would have felt like before the sprint, I think I could have probably did better, as well as if I didn't do that other attempt that other sprint ahead of time, I could have probably done better. But it is what it is. I live to race another day. And so jumping forward to the rooftop KOM, I decided to give my all. Again, I was going to attempt to go for a 5-minute PR, but as I was approaching the rooftop KOM, I realized that was not going to happen. But as I was climbing up the KOM, I basically stayed in the same gear, pushing hard through the incline parts of the KOM and just kind of pedaling through the flat parts. And so that gave me the opportunity to kind of pass a couple people. And as we start getting to the very top here, I just gave it all I can, holding, right in the upper 3, low 4 watts per kilogram range, kind of mid 4 watts per kilogram. And so as I crossed the finish line there, I kept pushing through because I wanted to actually see if I can get a PR on the rooftop KOM. And so I just kind of blindly kept pushing until I saw the arch of the rooftop pass by in the corners of the view. And so as I crossed the line in 70th place, which I feel like I did pretty good, 13 minutes behind, almost 14 minutes behind the first place, which the person did it in just under an hour. That is an incredible feat. That was definitely not my plan for today. And so, chapeau to them for, doing as good as they did. I, again, 13 minutes or just under 14 minutes after them, averaging 219 watts, which is pretty low. Definitely not the kind of power I should be producing. But again, I'm focusing on the sprints and trying to maintain a higher, trying to maintain my FTV and sprinting at the same time is really hard. Really, really hard to do. And so the balance is I'm giving up time on the GC and hopefully not hurting myself with regards to the time cut.
All right, well, ending in 70th place. Tell you what, 50 seconds behind A. Kroll. I'm happy with that, because that is one strong dude. So I'm very happy with that. 53 behind DMC. Great job, Brian. Way to kill it. And so, good race, good sprinting. That first sprint didn't do as well as I'd hoped. Had 24 seconds. I was hoping to do faster on the second one, but my legs could not take it. And then that second sprint, I'm only like half a second behind the top guys in the green jersey standings. And then the third sprint, I think I might have either matched them or beat them, the top guys. So we'll see. I'll check later. I won't know until tomorrow morning where I rank. Most likely we shuffled again. Again, right now I'm in third place. And so I don't know if I'll move up or down. Judging by what I saw today from some of the other guys, I either stay the same, or maybe me and Felix will switch places. I'll drop to fourth, he'll come back up to third, because he is super strong sprinter. He's the one that can sprint at about 1400 watts. So I fully expect that he did great on this stage in terms of points. And so we'll see. We'll see how it goes. I think I did really good on the timing wise and where I finished. Did my best to stay in the 220s, around there, plus or minus, and then kind of pushing it into the 250s on that second lap, just to keep my momentum going. Again, on the discs, felt good. So hopefully that works. So I'm gonna stop here. Again, thank you guys for cheering me on, keeping me motivated, and I will catch you guys on the next race, where we go to Innsbruck and take on the leg snapper 3 times. That's gonna be fun. So we'll see how that goes. Guys, Miguel from that thing you just watched. If you know where that reference is from, please leave it down in the comments below. One of my favorite channels. If you enjoyed this video, please hit the subscribe button. Watch videos, playlists, whichever pop up. But thank you so much for joining me on this journey, and I hope to see you next time.